49ers. Actually, let's go back to the preseason with the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. The whole Trey Lance thing completely was a disaster. A complete disaster. 3 first-rounders. He was supposed to be the heir apparent. He was supposed to be the guy that was going to go on and do spectacular things. And he turned out to be a dud. He now sits in Dallas. Okay? Then you get into the season. Garoppolo was injured in the NFC title game against the Eagles. You didn't really know. You still didn't really know at the beginning of the year what you got with this guy. And then all of a sudden, you started winning ball games again. You fast forward a couple months, you go through a 3-game losing streak. Man, you're losing to the Vikings. You're losing to P.J. Walker. You're losing to backup quarterbacks in the NFL. And you're the 49ers. What happened? Kyle started bailing. He kept everything together. The organization wobbled in that 3-game losing streak and the Trey Lance disaster. They came out of that 3-game losing streak, all the injuries on it, and now Kyle Shanahan has righted the ship. That's coaching. He guided him through tough waters. He got him through it and has blown out the Cowboys and Eagles. He knows what he has. Kept us calm, didn't go crazy, didn't do things out of character. He righted the ship. The difference is it's Kyle's ship to right. John Lynch works with him. Kyle Shanahan turned the boat around and made it successful, and now they're going full sales. Is Nick going to do that? Is Nick going to do? Is he going to do what Kyle Shanahan did? Is he going to right the ship? I want you to think about that again before I bring Mark on here. Kyle Shanahan had to right the 49ers ship in a 3-game losing streak. You're losing to P.J. Walker and the Vikings. They were treading water, injuries. People started losing faith. Brock Purdy turning back into the pumpkin. All of a sudden, he kept going, hey, and remember, this went back into the preseason with the Trey Lance shit. This guy was treading water in many ways. That organization, you lost 3-1's your future. They get in that 3-game losing streak. People are going like, damn, the Niners don't look like the team that we thought. Now in their resume, they destroyed the 2 teams that are their number 1 foes and 2 foes in the Eagles and Cowboys, and they destroyed both those teams. That's called coaching. This seminal moment with Nick Sirianni is going to tell us if he can right the ship. Okay? I mean, you don't play call, kid. You don't really – you're supposed to be this some sort of like player coach. This is why you are put in this role here. You're either going to do it or you're not, because the last 2 weeks, the Niners had an excuse. I'll get Mark here in a second. The Niners had an excuse. You know what that was? They had injuries. What's yours? Let's bring Marc Farzetta in. By the way, you can watch him in our pregame, halftime, postgame. He does a great job. He's got a show Monday through Friday right here on JAKIB Sports. I actually have, he's got a little bit of me in him, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, is that he kind of grows on you. See, you don't like me at first, I get it. I get it. I think that's an Italian broadcaster's thing. because you know what? I get this, Sileo. You know, I couldn't stand your ass at the beginning, but there's something there. I don't know. Why do I keep coming back here? That's what I do, and I enjoy watching you, Mark. I really do.
I appreciate it. I think it's like if you go over your Italian friend's house for dinner, the first time you're like, whoa, this is
way
too much.
This
is too much. And then you realize, like, oh, wait, this is all out of love and honesty. That's a beautiful thing. That's how we warm up to people, my friend.
That's exactly correct. Whoever hollers the loudest is the one that's the right way.
Exactly.
Nothing about facts. Don't ever let the facts get in the way.
Yeah, how many decibels you got? How many decibels? I don't care about your facts. How many decibels you bring to the table?
Whoever the loudest is wins the argument. All right, Mark, let's do this. I'm not going to ask you about the Cowboy game. I'm going to ask you about the last 8 quarters. Your takeaway in the last 8 quarters.
The Eagles were blown off the football. The worst, the obvious worst thing is guys don't look like there's effort. That's the worst thing you could ever see. But I didn't see that in this game. I saw a team that wasn't good enough. Like, they're just flat out not good enough. And a team that was supposed to be an upper echelon team, an elite team in the NFL, looked like they weren't prepared to play the other so-called elite teams. And I didn't think the Cowboys were elite. They're not able to beat a team barely over 500, barely able to beat the team that was 1 game over 500 in the Seattle Seahawks. And they don't look like they belong in the same field as the Cowboys. That was supposed to be the game where the Eagles prove that they're a lot better than the Cowboys. Not the Cowboys proving they were a lot better than the Eagles. And then the 49ers game, did they even go to practice that week? Did they even have a game plan? Because you start out hot by being able to get into the red zone on a 12-play drive. You come away with just 3 points. Then you get hot again. You have another 12-play drive. You have to settle for a field goal again. So finally, it looked like they were actually putting something together at the beginning of a game to control it. And then, oh my God, the next 3 quarters of that game were terrible. All 4 quarters against the Cowboys were terrible. And they just looked like a team that wasn't at all prepared for the challenge in front of them. And that is a direct reflection of coaching. And I got in this argument on the postgame show about, how much coaching can you blame here? When I see guys like Josh Sweat or Hassan Reddick or guys like Darius Slay or guys like James Bradbury who are veterans who kind of, I think are a lot better than what people will give them credit for. Oh, my God. When you see the guys that you usually can rely on making mistakes, that's where I'll say they're being put not in the right position to make a play. And that is 100% on Sean Desai. That's 100% on Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni. It's 100% on the coaching staff of this team. Yes, sometimes you're going to have players that aren't good enough, and there's a few of those as well. But when it comes to the coaching, they did not have this team prepared to play these last 2 football games, the biggest games by far on the schedule.
2 points I'm going to go down and expand on what you're talking about. And go with me here as I read these names off. Sean Desai, Brian Johnson, DJ Elliott, DK McDonald, Alex Tenay, Renell Williams, Marcus Brady, Matt Patricia, Tyler Brown, Taver Johnson, TJ Pagnetti, and Tyler Scudder. And I took 3 of the quality control guys off because that's more of a front office thing. So there's 22 coaches that are on Nick Sirianni's staff. Do you know how many of those guys are in first-year roles this year on this football team? 12.
Wow. That's a lot more than I would have guessed.
12. They changed over half the – so let's take a look at this. To what you're talking about, it's easy to go to the coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
But what you got here is the entire coaching staff, half the coaching staff, or a little over half the coaching staff, are in first-year roles on this coaching staff. These 12 guys out of 22, think about that, Mark. So Jalen Hurts, you pay him $50 million. You have a first-year coordinator, and you have a first-year quarterback coach with him. So when people say it's not coaching, I don't know, man. I think it is coaching because you have inexperience all up and down the line. And to go even further, to expand on what you're saying, I listened to Sean Desai today. And I heard Sean Desai go like this. Somebody, it may have been McMullen. I was talking to Tone about this. He asked the question, hey, the Cowboys, and I'm paraphrasing here. Yeah, the Cowboys did something different. And they came off script. And
the 4th and 2.
They changed it off. And I was like, so you weren't prepared for that? Did you really thought that Mike McCarthy was going to run the same game plan in game 1 versus you in game 2, and he wasn't going to change it up a little bit? They were not prepared. That's why when you're watching on the sideline, Mark, you're going, you hear Sirianni going, what was that? What was that? You're seeing all this, and you're like, how are you not prepared for that?
Yeah. Actually, that was the thing that was the most mind-blowing thing after the game when I looked at the box score, when I looked at the game book. I thought I was looking at the first half stats, not the final game. 3 receivers targeted by your quarterback in that game. That was the question. Yeah, they went off script. They did something different. We had a lot of one-on-one coverage on the outside that we thought we were going to be able to win one-on-one battles with. He said something very similar, if not exactly the same, when he was asked about the 4th and 2, where he dropped 2 safeties back when they only needed 2 yards. So that was Jeff McClain asking the question about that. Oh, yeah, they went off script. They did something that we weren't expecting. On a 4th and 2, how many of the situations? I would love to see the numbers on how many 4th and 2s the Cowboys have had, and they threw deep to the point where
Mark,
you needed to drop 2 safeties.
The only time in that game, though, that would happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely insane when you think about the coaching not being prepared for this. Both with Brian Johnson talking about only 2 guys targeted, and then the other was Sean Desai talking about the same exact thing, not being prepared for the moment. How are you not prepared if you've been here now? Brian Johnson was at least here last year. Sean Desai obviously was. He's only a first year. He's only a second year now off a defensive coordinator with the Eagles. Obviously, he was that with the Bears, but it is just mind-boggling that you go up against this team that you know you have plenty of film on. You've seen them before already in the season. You know what they do, and they catch you that off guard as a defensive coordinator. That doesn't make any sense. That is the definition of not putting your players in the right position to make a play. And I know everyone talks about it as a coach speak and cliche, but it's true. If you don't do that as a play caller, as a coordinator, you are putting your team and a win in peril every single time you do that. Look, I like the idea that he held himself accountable today. He took responsibility for it. Said something interesting. He would change every play call in a loss. If he made the wrong play call, they lose the game, he'd change everything.
I don't want Wednesday coaches. I want Sunday coaches.
That's exactly what I thought. Whoa. So that means you're not even fully convinced of your own game plan going into it. Like, as great and as novel as it sounds, to say, I would change everything. Oh, good for you that you have a little humble pie. I don't want that. I want a cocky SOB calling plays for me that would stand his ground almost no matter what. So for me, when he came out and said that, I was like, well, hold on a second. What are you doing throughout the week? And he actually gave a pretty detailed description. If you heard him, you heard this. He gave a pretty detailed description of what they do throughout the week. You know, when they practice play calls, when they practice those play calls in those situations with their players, when Nick Sirianni kind of says at the beginning of the week, this is how I see the game going, so I want you to do this kind of thing defensively. That's what I think would work best against this. And people don't understand, and I know everyone wants to focus on Brian Johnson as the play caller, the offense, and all that stuff. Nick Sirianni has a much bigger hand in that than we had thought. And Nick Sirianni has a bigger hand in the defensive side of this football as well. He's not calling plays defensively, but he certainly, as many head coaches do, set the parameters for what he wants to see from that defense. And so does, as you have so eloquently pointed out before, Sills, this analytics department. They got a big say in that meeting as to what's going to happen in those games.
Oh, you bet. Mark, you know, the majority of the coaches that are now coming out of these coaching staffs becoming head coach, not just an Eagle thing, are coming out of those quality control departments. And you know who the quality control departments are hired by? The organization and the analytics team. They give them all the cut-ups of the games. They give it to the coaches, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Those guys go. John Gruden came out of quality control. Brandon Staley, the guy in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski. All these guys came out of that analytics department, which went into quality control. Then you move up the chain. And
the offensive coordinator for the Jags.
Yeah, the guy with, yes.
I can't remember his name. He was here as a quality control guy. Chip Kelly brought in.
I'm
blanking on his name. Sorry. Yeah.
Let me go here and expand on this one here. Do you think this offense do you think it is developing since 2021?
I think they've gotten better players. I don't think that they
wait a minute. Here's
necessarily developed.
Do you think it's evolved, the offense since 2021? Has it evolved?
It's,
now wait, don't put Hurts or the talent in it.
Right.
Has this offense has it gotten better? Has it evolved?
No, it hasn't evolved. It's still a lot of the same, not trusting the run game, not trusting supposedly the best offensive line in football in the run game. It's relied too much on the pass. You haven't seen creativity. Very rarely you have seen, like, there was one play where they ran a fake tush push, essentially. I think it was against Minnesota. And you saw Jalen Hurts pop it to the outside. I went, oh, yeah, that's something creative. And it worked, and you haven't seen it again. You've seen a jet sweep once, and it worked, and then you never see it again. You have seen plays like that. The only thing you really see is the bread and butter are continuously the bubble screens or the tight end screens on the outside. You don't see him evolve and get the running back in the passing game more. Again, you go back to the idea of only 3 receivers targeted in this game by your quarterback. The 4 guys were targeted, and 1 was by the punter on the fake punt. So for me, there's a lack of creativity. There's a lack of a balance. There's a lack of trust. And it's a lot of the same mistakes they made a year ago. And here's something I thought was really telling. And this is from Shane Steichen last year, I believe it was, again, after the Cardinals game. The Eagles ran a bevy of bubble screens. Like the RPO, the bubble screen became a crutch for Jalen Hurts. And this was something that Nick Sirianni had talked about. This is something Shane Steichen acknowledged about how when he was looking to check down to a play, the check down would often be the bubble screen. It was an easy throw for him to make. He could see his target right there, throw to the outside, don't have to worry about seeing over the offensive line, defensive line, whatever. And that became too much of a crutch for Jalen Hurts. I am seeing way too much of that now. So I'm thinking, is that Brian Johnson? Is that Nick Sirianni? Or is that Jalen Hurts saying, hey, make sure that bubble screen is in there as my check down or whatever the case may be? And it's too much reliant on that. There's not enough RPO, which really helps keep the defense off balance. In a lot of ways, aside from getting the better players, A.J. Brown being one of them, and watching the maturation process of Devontae Smith, you have seen the talent on this team individually get better. You've seen Jalen Hurts get better. But overall, as far as creativity in the game plan and not being one of the worst words ever, predictable, yeah, it's definitely had a regression. It has not evolved.
So you understand, folks, what he's saying. The Eagles are stunting his growth because you're right. Hurts has gotten better. The offense hasn't evolved. You're not helping him. You are regressing him. And he had such a meteoric rise, okay, that all of a sudden you decide to hire a guy, give a guy $50 million, give a guy a $20 million wide receiver toy, draft a guy Devontae in the first round, and then you hire a first-year offensive coordinator, a first-year quarterback coach, and you're trying to tell me with all the analytics that are involved in this that you're going to also now do this. The thing that made him a weapon last year, you're going to run the RPO 50 times less than what you did because you're on pace now for about 98 RPOs this year. Last year, you ran them 150 times. You're telling me those 50 plays that were dynamic last year, third 11s, third and 8s, breaking people's backs on MRPOs. I've never seen a quarterback in my life, and I'll say this with conviction. I've never seen an RPO guy that is accurate, and the decision-making process that he had, he's a better RPO quarterback than he is a progression reader. You want him to do the thing that he's the least able to do. Tom Brady said this, Mark. I learned how to read defenses into my 20th year because defenses were constantly changing every year to try to defend me. I had to learn, always had to watch and get pre-snap reads, understand what they were trying to do. If you're telling me this is almost the same offense from 2021, Nick Bose is right. It is predictable. Mm-hmm. They're not evolving. You're stunting the guy's growth.
It's a horrifying thing when you think about, and I've used Jalen Hurts' name to describe other athletes that I want to see a quote-unquote Hurtsian leap from. An example in basketball would be Tyrese Maxey. I want to see that Hurtsian leap from Tyrese Maxey. That's how great it was. Meteoric, absolutely. Hurtsian is the way I like to say it now. To see him not be challenged, and look, they are challenging by saying do something different. If you're not breaking the RPO out against teams, and this was another thing that went into it, a lot of people looked at it, and Brandon Graham was even one of them, saying, hey, maybe they're saving my snap count for later in the season. Turns out that's not true. Maybe they're saving the RPO. Seth Joyner had this same type of hypothesis. Maybe they're saving the RPO for later in the season. If you're not seeing that against the 49ers and the Cowboys,
you're never going to see
it. You're going to wait for the playoffs? Oh, that's where you're going to do something you haven't done all season. You're going to do that in a playoff. Okay, let's see how that works out. Because if you're trying to lock up the number 1 seed, if you're trying to lock up that home field advantage, you're breaking it out against San Francisco 49ers. Even if the 49ers weren't really a threat to take the number 1 seed, and you're going into that game. To beat that defense, you're going to do everything you can to beat that defense, including the RPO. So that is mind-boggling to me. And then see the same thing against the Cowboys. I don't understand it. There are guys, and I'm not putting Nick Foles and Jalen Hurts in the same category here, but you have seen guys like Nick Foles that just have that bread and butter. And the RPO, oddly enough, for a guy that had no R to the P, he absolutely thrived. And when Frank Reich sat down with him when he took over for Carson Wentz before they won the Super Bowl, he sat down with him and he said, you tell me what you're most comfortable doing, and we'll make that the bread and butter. And Nick said, let's run those RPOs like I was doing with Chip Kelly, and let's have some fun. Cut the field in half for me. I'm reading one guy, and I can deliver the football easily on a slant. Jalen Hurts throwing a slant round, and I'm sure you've seen the numbers by now about how successful the Eagles have been on running a slant. With A.J. Brown, time and time again, doing that off the RPO, you're going to torch defenses with that. And the fact that you can see that, I can see it's unbelievable that they're not going back to it. So I don't know what goes into it. Yes, obviously analytics have the big say, as we've talked about, but is it something that Jalen Hurts wants to get away from? Because I wouldn't believe that either. That wouldn't make any sense to me. But then again, we've seen another quarterback in this city, Donovan McNabb, say he didn't want to be known as a runner. And it's like, well, if it works, do it. How about a winner? Do you want to be known as a winner, like winning a Super Bowl? Because it would help. You know, it's crazy to me.
McNabb regressed himself.
Yeah,
okay? When he took the run out of his inability to be able to improvise, I thought the best part of Donovan McNabb, just like when you saw Aaron Rodgers early or you saw Favre, when you improvise, Rodgers is deadly. Same thing with Hurts. When Hurts improvises in open space, dude, you can't defend it. You just when Steve Young was back in the day running 4.5s and 70% completion percentage, you can't defend that, Mark. It's like there's nowhere to go. I want to ask you a fundamental question about a team that you grew up with, you love, you passionately cover. Let me throw this at you here. And I asked Angelo this the other day, and I'm going to ask you it. Do you think it's more important for Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie to have control of the Eagles, or do you think it's more important for them to win the Lombardi?
I think it's more important for them to have control. I mean,
that pains you to say, doesn't it?
It does, because it makes winning a Super Bowl a negative. And I had a conversation with somebody.
That's the 17, right?
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody, and these words came out of their mouth, and my brain melted and poured out my ears, and I had to reassemble it somehow. They said the Eagles winning a Super Bowl was the worst thing that ever could have happened. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
How dare you?
I get it.
Wait your whole life for this moment, and then it turns out to be the worst thing that possibly happened. And at the time, I knew the point. I knew the point that was trying to be made. It's like everything we have done was right because we won a Super Bowl. And it's like, how about the other times where you could have won a Super Bowl, or could have been at least in more contention to win a Super Bowl if you would have done the other things? The shining, gleaming example of that is, hey, Andy, maybe this strict West Coast offense you're running with Donovan McNabb, who could throw the ball through 5 football stadiums, maybe bring in a number 1 wide receiver that can stretch the field. Maybe do that a little bit. Oh, look, here you are. You're making it into a Super Bowl, and that guy on the broken leg is playing in that game and is your best player on the field. So for me, that's the most mind-numbing thing about it. And when you look at the situation the Eagles are in right now, there are definitely things that we look at, whether it's analytics, whether it's just basic running the football, trusting your offensive line, whatever the case may be, not investing in linebackers when you think about an overall philosophy, that just leave me banging my head against the wall. And yes, the fact that the Eagles won the Super Bowl is a wonderful thing, and the parade was fantastic, and it was beautiful to see the city celebrate and all that stuff. But in a way, it absolutely convinced this front office that what they were doing was spot on, and getting to another Super Bowl. Look, just put yourself in Howie Roseman's shoes for a second, all right? You got banished from
have a crown on.
And I'm going to guess smaller sneakers. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. No, bigger sneakers, because I'm sure he wears a size 4.
Okay. Yeah, right. Wedge your feet into those. But if you think about it like this, you're looking at Howie Roseman, you're banished from the land. You come back 2 years later, you win a Super Bowl. With maybe we've talked about this before, maybe the deepest team ever. Then you're back 5 years later with a new quarterback, a new head coach. You're going to think you kind of know what you're doing. So, in a way, they feel like they are justified getting to 2 Super Bowls in the last 6 or 5 seasons, winning one of those Super Bowls, obviously, you feel like you're justified in what you are doing. The problem for me is that there are clearly blemishes going from that team to this team this year that are just undeniable. You had to scramble and get Zach Cunningham at the last minute because you devalued the linebacker position that drastically. You had to take a flyer on Miles Jack, who was more concerned with learning electrical wiring for a doomsday scenario than he was in playing linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles or for anybody in the NFL.
And then you had a doomsday shelter in his backyard.
He was waiting for the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, right.
So I look, there are obvious blemishes that I don't care if you've been to every Super Bowl over the last 6 years. You got to address with this team if you want to make it back to a 3rd Super Bowl in the very near future. So for me, there are things that obviously gave a stamp of approval in winning that much, having that success, but there are just fundamental philosophies that you can't ignore anymore. And this team is a shining example of that.
How much of the loss of Shane Steichen would you put on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would put it as powerful impact. If 10 is the most powerful impact, I would say it's about an 8, because there's a staying power that is there with an offensive coordinator and play caller. There's a trust there. Like Nick Sirianni tried calling plays and it wasn't good. And he said, Shane, you should do this. Shane, you should do this. And all of a sudden, oh, everything looks fantastic. So now you look at it, you go from, and then it gets better the following year. With Brian Johnson, there's a kind of the new guy kind of attitude around that. There's almost a comfort level. There is a comfort level there with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts a couple of weeks ago when he was asked about Brian Johnson and slow starts, he couldn't have done more bragging. Like Brian Johnson's mom couldn't have bragged more for Brian Johnson. Okay. it was nuts. So for me, I think it's a big learning curve.
It's like your mom writing a letter to like your homeroom saying why you're late.
Yeah. No, you should really let Marc Farzetta, my wonderful son, into Harvard. Like, no, that's not happening, Mom. So for me, I go back to that with Jalen Hurts, where he was just trying to really, in Utah, he was a really good quarterback. Utah, he did this. Utah, I'm like, I don't know if that's the brag we want here. And as good as he was at those other things, yeah, as good as he was, it's like, did he do it at the NFL? And people all talk about the same thing over and over. He's known him since he was 4 years old. I don't care if he babysat him, whatever.
Utah.
The fact that it's not getting done at the pro level, at the NFL level, is the only thing I care about. And nobody cares about anything else. They just care about, the rent is due. Hey, Jalen, you say it all the time. The rent is due. The rent is due for this entire coaching staff. Brian Johnson is a first-year play caller in the NFL. This is a huge thing that the Eagles miss, and having a offense coordinator and play caller that you could have confidence in. And Nick Sirianni, when he stripped himself of the play calling responsibilities, give it to Shane Steichen, no pun intended, took it and ran. Brian Johnson now, I don't believe he's calling every single play that's out there. I think Nick Sirianni is a little bit more saying it, granted, with the offense having some sputters here. But I think it's a huge miss that I would definitely rank as an 8 in terms of 1 to 10 and most powerful impact. Not having Shane Steichen here, not having that trust, and not having that experience has certainly hurt this Eagles offense.
Well, let me read you a quote here. Okay, I want to read you a quote from Nicky Sirianni here. On changing who was calling the plays for the Eagles, I do not think that that's the issue at all. I think Brian Johnson's doing a great job. I need to be able to manage the game the way I see fit. Thoughts? I mean, really, do you have to fall that hard on the sword for Howie? Excuse me. I mean, Brian. I mean, come on, Mark. Dude.
Yeah.
Don't answer that question. The best thing for me to do, I would go like this. We're putting things together. We're going to get it all together. We'll be all right. Instead, you go into this detail. Brian Johnson's doing a great job when everybody who watch bitty football or the little electronic football where you put the guys on.
Oh my
and you
God.
Start it,
yeah.
And that stuff just even those guys who know how to do that.
Grandma's basement.
Know that Brian Johnson's not doing that good a job. Why would he do that and say that?
I liked his other quote, and I thought this is what you were going to say. When he was asked about it, he originally just said no. And I was like, and I would have had so much respect.
I'm good with that, though.
Yeah, I'm great with that. I mean, look. I think it was Tim McManus, the ESPN, that asked the question and said, "Could you expand upon that a little bit?" And that's where he gave the quote that you gave. But I'd rather have a head coach, like I said, almost similar to Sean Desai. Like, just be confident in what you're doing. Like, you put the research in, you did your homework, have confidence in it. Don't say, oh, well, we lost, so I changed everything. Okay, that's adorable. But no, in all seriousness, I want you to have confidence in what you're doing. I want your work during the week to pay off when kickoff happens.
That's the first time I've heard that at an NFL press conference. The word's adorable. But hey, I'm going to go here. But here, you want to know what kind of maniac I am here and how I am a conspiracy theory guy, because I really do believe that there was more people that shot and killed President Kennedy. So again, I'm one of those kind of guys.
All right.
I don't really question the moon landing, because I'm Neil Armstrong's kind of like, because when I was a kid, that was kind of like my idol.
When are we doing the conspiracy show, Sills?
No. Oh, I would love to do that. I love conspiracies, and I got one here for you.
Okay.
So when Sirianni says, I'm not changing who's calling the plays, I don't think that's the issue. Is he blaming Jalen Hurts?
I mean, it certainly sounds like that. If it's not play calling, if it's not coaching.
He's blaming the players at minimum here.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not play calling, if it's not coaching, then...
so it's the coaches that are doing a good job and not the players, according to the coaches?
Yeah, you ask me how I'm doing, Sills. I'm doing a great job. You know what I'm saying? It's off-putting to me that, look, I understand you're not going to announce that you're going to strip Brian Johnson of play calling. And I got to be honest, I know it's always the fun thing for fans to do, to zero in on a coordinator and say, this guy sucks and he's the reason. I don't think he's part of the solution per se.
It's the analytics department.
That's a big part of it. And look, as good as Nick Sirianni was last year, as good as he is at understanding what he does well, and I think most of what he does well has been the game plan, especially last year, beginning part of this year. I think that has kind of hit a bit of a snide here. But when it comes to the rest of this season, I think it's only going to be salvaged if you really start trusting the players on the field and not more so the analytic department. I think you have to trust guys to get one of the great philosophies here in Philadelphia is investing in the trenches. So if you have this offensive line, I'll go back to it again. They're this talented, and you're making them pass block as much as you're doing. I know that goes back to Andy Reid, but you got DeAndre Swift here for a reason. No, he's not costing you top dollar or anything like that. But whenever people talk about following the money, I get it. I understand it. And John McMullen always talks about that, follow the money. I'd rather follow the talent. And if the talent, yes, they're spending money in talented positions, obviously. But when it comes to this offensive line, you can ride them to victory time and time again if you allow the run game to get the opportunity to break one loose. It's like you watch a game where maybe they've contained a guy like even Christian McCaffrey. You've contained Christian McCaffrey, but if it wasn't for that 145-yard run, he would only have 90 yards in the game. Well, the reason the 45-yard run happened is because they kept on hammering the football. And I know it's a pass-first league. I get that. But when you have guys like this on your offensive line, especially one as mobile, how are you not trusting them in the run game? And then what is beyond me is that one of the things that has made this offensive line so damn good is you have guys who are, you can't really talk about many offensive linemen sales, as nimble, like guys that can get outside. Every single one of these guys is an athlete. And they're not using their athletic ability. So you're
seeing fat guys. Those are some of the best athletes. Let me say this. When that guy, Jason Kelce, leaves, that brotherly shove is gone. It'll be gone because he is the master of that thing. Carson Wentz ran that thing 26 to 27 times to success when he was doing it, when they were doing that quarterback sneak. They weren't calling it anything then. But I'm telling you, Jason Kelce is one of the reasons. I want to ask you one last question here. Howie on the retooling of the defense. I mean, the linebacker core, every single guy that's in and active right now was waived. You don't have one guy, because Dean's on IR. You don't have one guy you drafted. Okay? You have no edge depth. Josh Sweat has played more plays. Do you know Josh Sweat has played more plays now than he's played at any time in his career to this point? And he's still got 4 games left.
Oof.
Okay?
Oof.
So when people are going, he hasn't had a sack in a couple games. 2 games ago, he hit the 100-play mark. He's played more plays now with no edge help. Look at your corners. Now, the Bradbury extension is in hindsight. Would I have done it? Yes. I thought he was the better corner because of that year ago. But I always said to people, those guys play center field. They're not lockdown corners. They're not press corners. They can't do it. They fit into the system that the Eagles like. Slay's not been horrible if you look at everything, but the safety, look at the safety room. I mean, there's not a talented guy. And Reed Blankenship, I'm sorry. I'm not building my team around him or Dallas Goedert. You know why? Because you're hurt all the time. I can't have a guy miss 25 to 27% of your career every week or every year and sit there and think that I'm going to have you on my team. As talented as Dallas Goedert is, do you know that guy misses 27% of the season every year?
And not surprising, yeah, for that percentage.
Okay, well, how do you build your offense around that? Mm-hmm. And one of the most important positions today, Mark, is the tight end position because of the lack of linebackers that you see in the league today when it comes to cover two guys like, let's say, a guy like Derek Brooks, or remember the guy Ryan Shazier back in the day? Was
of course.
On Gronk.
Yeah.
He was spectacular, right? Okay. He was the Gronk equalizer back in the day when Pittsburgh was playing well. Anyway, I mean, how he kind of like nickel and dime that whole thing on that side of the ball. And you wonder why you're sitting here. This is not a 2-week thing. You're last in almost every statistic, Mark, defensively. That's 15 weeks. That's not 2 weeks. This is a trend in who you're not getting better over there. Anybody who thinks that defense is going to get better, you're crazy. The only guy playing great ball there is Reddick still.
Mm-hmm. The thing that's really wild to me is that as much as I love Jalen Carter, I no matter who you are, if you're a rookie, I worry about the rookie wall. That is the concern with me.
It's a rookie rep wall. And Jordan Davis has hit the rep wall.
Okay.
And what I mean, he's never played this amount of reps. In his 4 years at Georgia, they rotated the entire time. Mm-hmm. And so when you get up near 122, 190, especially big guys, 348, 305, you're getting up near that 70 play mark, and you're getting up there and you're getting over that. Dude, it's the reps. They're playing too many reps. They miss Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when did they get both those players?
Mid-season.
It was yes, and also Fletcher Cox had just played himself into the ground against Washington.
Was it the Pittsburgh game last year? And then all of a sudden they brought those dudes in, and he's played the best DT in the last year from that Pittsburgh or Tennessee game, maybe to this point. I think he's played the best defensive tackle all year for the Eagles.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm trying to remember what game it was, but yeah, it was after he played a insane amount of snaps with Fletcher Cox that they went out there and said, "Okay, hold on, maybe that was a bit too big of an ask to ask Fletcher Cox to play that much." And that's where they got Linval Joseph. That's where they got Ndamukong Suh. I would love to see that same type of resurgence to that defensive line for the rest of the season. I don't know if it happens, but I think they do need that kind of break. And if Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham is going to get more snaps lined up as a defensive tackle, then so be it. Because the guys that are still a little bit fresh at this point need to make sure they're going in there and operating at 100%.
I'm going to show you something, man. I went to King of Prussia this past Saturday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You okay? So look at this, man. Don't ever say that Eagle fans are assholes. Look at this here, man. This guy, look at this.
Oh,
look at this, man. He brought this to the Hooters King of Prussia here, man. And we were talking birds there. Isn't that cool, man?
That is fantastic.
Dude, ton of people showed up, man. We had a great time. You know, I'll tell you what. One thing I love about the fan base will tell you off every day, come back the next day and tell you a little bit more off.
No, the thing I love about Philly is everybody, you know exactly where you stand. There's no Minnesota nice in Philadelphia. It's like, oh, or the Southern nice, like bless your heart. Like, no, it's like go to hell. Like, exactly.
No. Here's a great example of that. You go in Los Angeles and you're like, excuse me, do you know how to get to West Shore or West Shore Boulevard? Do you know how to get over to Santa Monica? Yeah, you take the 405 and you go over here. You go like this. Hey, how do I get over to Gino's here? And what do I take? Hey, what do I look like? A Mapsco? Hey, what do I look like? Big Ben? I don't know what time it is. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, what do I look like? Mapsco? What am I, huh? Mark, great stuff, man. Don't forget to catch your show Monday through Friday. Give the time out, too, because I'm laying in bed, and I hate the sound because this is creepy and stupid sounding.
Oh, no, go on.
I know. I click him on.
All right, now I'm weirded out. No.
I know. Don't be creeped out here, bud. But I do. I listen there. What's the time of the show, man?
6 a.m. to 7 a.m., the Farzy Show. We do it right here on the JAKIB Media Sports channel. We do it on the Farzy Show channel as well. And then it's available throughout the day for downloads, podcasts, and all that fun stuff as well. Also on Twitter.
And don't forget to halftime and post. He does it from Oceans Casino. Those guys were awesome, too. They put me up there on Saturday, man. I'm on the 19th floor up there. They had 2 Heinekens in the refrigerator for me. The only problem I had, they had like a cheese tray, and I'm like, I'm a sandwich guy. I'm not really a cheese plate with I like the calamari they had on it though.
They had a little calamari on there for you?
Yeah, they had little calamaris on there for me.
Hey.
Yeah, no. And the calamari was good too. I liked the way they cooked it. It wasn't over fried. It was really nice. It was good stuff. It really did.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'll be making some calamari 7 fish. I'm hosting this year. Big day. Big year for me. Hosting 7 fish for the first time.
Here's mine for Friday, Christmas Eve. Scongeal.
Nice.
Bacala.
Definitely. Whoa. Like fully salted and soaked bacala?
Yes.
Like, okay. Wow. You are a traditionalist. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We'll of course, our world famous spaghetti and our meatballs. They're legendary made because here our meatballs. You see, there's white guy meatballs and then there's Italian meatballs. You see, my wife, her mom made white guy meatballs, and that's just rolled up meat.
Metagon meatballs.
You gotta have the day-old bread,
the
parsley, the Parmesan, the 1 egg. You put it in there, you fry it up, then you drop it in your sauce. You're ready to rock and roll. You're sitting there, you cook it all day. Oh, no, by the way, anytime you see sauce with water and condensation on the plate, get it out of here.
Oh, yeah.
I do not. That's when you know you got somebody named Mickey Stevens making your spaghetti, some Irishman making spaghetti for you. That's not working for me, man. You better have a vowel when you make it for me.
I look, I know people are like, it's elitist. It's not elitist. It's family. Okay.
No, it's absolutely correct. Hey, get this. I mean, on my recruiting trip, I was going to go down to Alabama, Mark. This was years ago when Coach Bryant was still alive. And so he goes, hey, I go, I don't know if there's too many guys with vowels in the name down in Tuscaloosa. I go, how many Italian restaurants you got, Coach? And he goes like this. We have King of Italy. I'm like, King of Italy.
King, okay.
I go, who's the chef? He goes, Tommy Chu. I go, I don't think so.
There's also a Pizza Hut. There's also a Pizza Hut down the street.
Mark, I go, he started laughing his ass off. He sends me a letter later on going, I'll see you on Sundays. Good luck to you, man. Hilarious stuff, man. He goes, Tommy. I go, Tommy Chu? No, I'm all right. Hey, dude. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Hey, absolutely. And if I don't see you, hey, Buon Natale, all right?
Absolutely, too. Buon Natale to you, too, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. See you.
You got it. Do me a favor, guys. I really appreciate Mark. That's awesome. Please hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Eat chicken wings, buy Hooters things. Christmas is near. Shop, have a beer. Christmas shopping shouldn't be hard. Give your friends a Hooters gift card.
This year, stuff their stockings and yours too with a one-size-fits-all gift card. Buy a $25 Hooters gift card and receive a $5 Santa's bonus card. Make it Hooters for the holidays.
Eat chicken wings, buy Hooters things. Christmas is near. Gift cards are here. Good at Hooters everywhere now. Hooters gifts are always favored.